Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about harden not our hearts. Have you ever heard in a homily where the priest talks about stiff neck and hardened hearts? Well, today, through the enlightenment of the indwelling, it bared great truths within my own soul about hardened hearts. You know how it says also too, thou shalt not judge? Well, it kind of does go hand in hand with one another. And it's kind of like this. Let's say that there's other individuals, whether it be at work or your family members or even past history of your life, you judged or you gossip. Well, if you think about it, even innocently that you judge and you gossip, it's hard to remember every sin that we do, even our venial sins. But over a period of time, if not years, if we don't confess those sins or those judgment calls that we make out in the open with public and so forth, in our interaction every day with human beings, even our own family, well, that judgment can harden your heart, which would do what? It would actually put out even love from your heart, because you are not being Christ-like. You're judging. So have you ever feel that there's such a burden on your shoulder that, well, that can be hardened of heart because of judgment, of gossip? And so I wanted to read this parable of harden not our hearts. And the antiphon that we often hear in Lent says, if today you hear his voice and harden not your hearts. This line teaches me a way to think about the journey of Lent, to allow our hearts to be more open and responsive to whatever the Lord has to tell us and the world. Lent is a season of conversion. The Greek term for conversion is metanoia, which means turning around. To convert is to get reoriented, to change our focus. For many of us, that means changing our focus from ourselves to others and to God's call. Also affirms that God speaks to us through the desires of our hearts. In a sense, we become more and more aware that what God wants and what we really most deeply desire are the same. Lent helps us to get in touch with the deeper calls of our heart. Hardening our hearts, though it is a great temptation, to be human means we'll sometimes experience pain and suffering, and yet we can choose how to respond. Do we try to toughen up our hearts and try to protect them further, or follow the way of Jesus and allow our hearts to be softened so that we may be better love one another? Of course, at the start, we need to be able to hold tenderly our own pain and sorrow, and even reverence our anger. Over the longer haul, however, there's a difficult kind of choice to make. How do I think about my own past experiences or suffering? Do I see them as a reason for fear or as further opportunity to love? We can even think of our own sins in this way. How does my experience of my own shortcomings and failures allow me to be more compassionate and forgiving towards others and theirs, and even in family? A reading early on the Lent reminds me to choose life. When we choose to allow our hearts to be softened rather than hardening our hearts, we choose the way of life. When we choose to follow God's call with trust in God that exceeds our trust in ordinary human beings, we choose life. Love can continue to flow through our lives when we do not cut off the channels of the heart through which it flows. Love flows when we listen for the voice of God and act responsively to it. This was a quote by Maria McCoy, and I thought it was poignant that I would read that to you because it is a great reflection of hardened hearts. And because of judgment, our heart can be hardened, that it literally puts out love. May God bless each and every one of you. Until next time.